live now from Washington, D.C., the newest sworn-in United States Senator, one of the newest United States Senators, our friend Senator Thom. We can now call you Senator Thom Tillis. Good morning, Senator Tillis. How are you?
Good morning, Henry. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm sorry I missed your affair the other day. We got snowed out, but you guys have obviously had a very busy week. Tell us how things are going for you up there in your first week on Capitol Hill.
Well, it was kind of nice with our first week. We had 500 or 600 folks come up from North Carolina to celebrate the moment with us. And after the swearing in, we got to work. We had committee meetings. We formed up the committees, and we had a substantive bill on the floor yesterday, and we're looking to voting on cloture for the Keystone Pipeline on Monday night. So Leader McConnell and Speaker Boehner and the leadership are living up to their commitment to get Congress working again.
I want to talk about some of the legislation, but first, let me I gotta get a little feel for the moment for you and where you are personally after, coming from being a guy who was talked into running for city council in a small little town in western North Carolina because you were mad about something in the Parks and Rec Department. And then all of a sudden you're Speaker of the House in North Carolina. And then I guess this has all happened in less than 10 years. You're now, boom, you're in the United States Senate. I mean, it's a pretty amazing story.
Oh, it is. It is amazing. I've walked around the building. You go through the Capitol, and I think it's really, when you walk in the Senate office buildings, it could be a government office building anywhere, but when you walk into the Capitol, you realize, where you are and what your responsibilities are, and it's exciting. And the people up here are good people, the staff that we brought on board. Incidentally, we're going to be opening an office in Greenville, and we'll have staff out there. I'm very proud of how my staff have really gotten constituent service, our field operations going. We're going to continue to be adding people, but I'm just glad to be a part of it. And we've got a lot of work to do, and hopefully a president that will recognize the American people want things done differently.
And, it was such a brutal year with the expensive television and radio and all the campaigning that you had to do. And it got a little bit nasty down the stretch, but,
a little bit, you think?
Try to be nice, but it's got to, I don't want to overemphasize it, but you've got to really feel proud of what has taken place, and I'm proud of the people of North Carolina for recognizing that we've got a guy like you that is the right guy at the right time.
Well, I tell you, Henry, I'm proud of the work that literally thousands of people did in North Carolina to make this possible. It was to try and beat an incumbent senator with a 2-to-1 disadvantage for funding only happens because of the hard work of people on the ground, a lot of the county party organizations, the volunteers, the Republican women's groups first among them. That's how we got here. And what we need to do to stay here is to fulfill our promises. We're going to start. I've met with a number of the chairmen of the committees I'm under in agriculture. We're going to start next week with oversight on agriculture, on the VA situation. We'll be getting an inventory of the hospitals that still have problems and the progress that they have made since this has come to light. Being able to work on regulatory reform, it's exciting. There are just so many opportunities to fulfill our promises, and I'm going to be obsessed with that, and I'm looking forward to reporting progress on fairly short order.
Senator Thom Tillis on a busy morning in Washington, D.C. Let's talk about some of the you mentioned the Keystone Pipeline. You jumped on that bill and co-sponsored the Keystone XL pipeline legislation. Now, it's going to pass, obviously, and then the question early on was whether or not the president would veto it. He was hedging at first. Then midweek, his folks came out and said, oh, he'll veto it. So, the question is, are there enough Democrats that are going to come back and help to override the veto? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure. I know that we should have north of 60 votes. I don't know what the exact count is. Whether or not we can get to 67 is a question, but we will still send that bill to the president's desk. I think a part of what he's calculating is, well, if he just says he's going to veto it, then we'll go, okay, we're not going to take action. He isn't going to get a pass. He's going to have to look the American people in the eyes and tell to them why something that 70% of them support, he's against. And hopefully he'll begin to recognize that the American people want energy independence. They want America to be an energy superpower. It is important for economic security. It's important for our national security. And the commander-in-chief should recognize that first among us. So we just got to continue to look for opportunities to cooperate with the Democrats and the minority caucus, send legislation to them, and hopefully get the president to recognize that the American people want to go a different direction. He said back in August all of his policies were on the ballot, every single one of them. And the American people elected historic majorities in the House and the Senate. I think that he should look at that as an indication that the policies that he put on the ballot are not policies that the average American wants to see go forward.
Mm-hmm. And the House yesterday took action, first part of discussion that would really deal with Obamacare, which would be reauthorizing people to work 40 hours and still not have to be taken into health insurance plans across the country. How do you feel about that one? I mean, that's the first part of this Obamacare thing. That has been a real problem. I know in our little company, it's a problem. We've had to say to our managers here, hey, look, you cannot let our part-time people work more than 29 hours. And
well, it's even worse than that across the state of North Carolina. I can't tell you the number of businesses that said it was heartbreaking, but they had to tell employees that had been working there for a while that they had to go from 40 hours a week to 29 hours a week,
right,
where they may have been able to make ends meet. So it's not only not giving a little bit more hour to part-time workers, but it's making previously full-time workers part-time.
Yeah.
And now they're having to work two jobs. And then you talk to businesses that say it's adding cost and complexity to them because they're having to work now with somebody who may have been able to make ends meet on 40 hours a week. Now they got to try and work out the scheduling for another business down the street so that this person who has to work two jobs now can actually make the schedules work. That's one. The medical device tax, there's a number of provisions in Obamacare that I think we're just preparing for the reality that even if we get a vote on the floor to repeal Obamacare and come up with some solutions for the things that make sense, that the president's going to veto it. So we have to go ahead and begin the work, and we would not have sufficient votes to override the veto. So we have to begin the work of how we dismantle the worst parts of it until we can eradicate the majority of it.
That's the strategy, to take the pieces that are most problematic and try to fix those as we move forward, because, as you say, there's no way that the president is ever going to you'd never override a veto if you just put a bill on the floor that passed both chambers that says we're going to just do away with Obamacare.
Yeah, it's his signature legislation. I don't see that being likely. But I do think that we can make a lot of progress, and I do think that we should push the envelope. And like I said, if a repeal vote came to the floor, I'd certainly vote for it. I just know that it would be a symbolic gesture, but I think it's only going to be that, because I know that of various opportunities where we may get Democrats to work with us to override vetoes or approach 67 votes. I don't think that that's one of them.
I know yesterday also, Senator Tillis, that you voted to support the reauthorization of the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. And, of course, we're looking at a situation this morning in Paris, just a tragic situation this week in Paris, in France, that tells us that the world is very dangerous. And, we haven't had another major terrorist attack in this country in years. But, with this kind of stuff happening in places like Paris, France, you wonder if it's just a matter of time. And, Congress has got to do, you guys have got to do everything you can to try to protect the American people.
Right. And I think one of the things you don't do if you're trying to achieve that is continue to let a steady stream of people from Guantanamo Bay go back, where about a third of them are reentering in one form or fashion in efforts designed to attack the West. We have got to be aggressive. We have got to have an aggressive strategy on ISIS. We've got to recognize that some of these things that are being characterized as workplace violence are acts of terror, and we need to deal with them in that way. We have to get very aggressive, because this situation in France is very unlike most other things. And now you hear the reports this morning that there's apparently a separate incident going on to where they think this was well coordinated by people who were trained outside of the outside of France in that particular case. If all that proves to be true, then that means that terrorists are now coming where we live, and that's at least in Europe. And I think that's a very dangerous trend that we have to end.
Senator Thom Tillis, I know you got to go. Have you got another minute for me to ask you a couple of state questions?
Sure.
We just had Paul Tyne on. Of course, I'm sure you know the news out of North Carolina this week. Biggest political news: one of our Eastern North Carolina Democratic House of Representatives members has left the Democratic Party. He's going to be voted on in Raleigh this morning as a member of the Republican caucus, which I was saying I assume that will pass, but you, having been the guy that's had to keep that caucus together for the last 4 or 5 years, you're never quite sure what the House Republican caucus is going to do you?
No, you don't. I mean, that's what makes it fun. but it's like a box of chocolates. But
yeah.
But honestly, but Paul was considered a sort of center-right Democrat anyway. I think that he recognizes that the many of the members of the Democratic caucus are going much further left than the citizens of North Carolina wanted to go, and he's focused on business issues, those sorts of things. So I would expect the majority of the caucus, if not unanimous, support for that. I think that he's, I have a number of the most unreported or underreported fact in North Carolina politics is I had a great relationship with a number of people across the aisle. Didn't mean I agreed with them on policy, but Paul was one of them, and I think that he'd be an asset for the Republican caucus. I'm going to be down there next week, by the way. I'm going to be there for swearing-in day on I'm going to try and get there on Tuesday and be there on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to seeing my colleagues and seeing the transition.
Well, I was about to say to you that, it's been a tradition that you've come on our show when we've been in Raleigh, and we're going to be there Wednesday morning. So I'm going to be beating on your people to get you over there.
Good. No, good. That's great. I'd love to.
We'll be.
You're going to do it over at the Planet?
We'll be over at the Daily Planet Cafe Wednesday morning. So I'll get with Daniel, your press guy, and we'll try to schedule you to come over if you got time. And
Old Pumpkin's right here.
Yeah, right. And Tim Moore, your friend, will be elected to your position. He will succeed you as Speaker of the House. And Tim has been a good soldier for you. He was your House Rules Committee chair, and I think he'll do a good job as Speaker of the House.
I do. Tim is a good friend. The Rules Chair is a tough job. I mean, it's really it's the position I have to rely on the most when we're trying to keep order and moving the chamber along. Tim's going to do a great job. He's a good friend. He's bright. He knows more about that legislature than I ever did. He was there 3 terms before me. I think he's going to do a great job. I think David Lewis and Nelson Dollar, all of the folks who played roles in our leadership are going to do a great job. And I think it's an indication that they want to continue to move and largely in the direction we started 4 years ago.
I know you got to go. You got other things to do, like go do that Senate thing this morning. So we're going to let you go.
I think I may even be presiding this afternoon.
Oh, really?
Depending on how the session goes.
No kidding. Your first time? Would I be on C-SPAN? Can we watch you?
Yeah, but they won't let me bring in my big gavel. The gavel here is kind of a gavelette.
Yeah, gavelette.
I told Vice President Biden the other day, I said, that's not a gavel. I got a gavel. It's about the size of a croquet mallet. But no, I guess according to the rules, we've got to use that one. I can't bring Ray into the chamber.
So what time will you be presiding? We'll all tune into C-SPAN and watch your first effort to...
If we continue the session, I don't know if we will, depending upon the business this morning. I think it's 12:30.
Okay, well, good. We'll take a lunch break and watch you on C-SPAN today. Then that'll be exciting.
Yeah, if we end up doing it, we'll have Daniel or somebody tweet it out, so you'll know.
All right, great. Well, listen, thank you for taking the time this morning. You know how we feel about you. I say to people all the time how fortunate I feel that we are to have had you in state leadership. Sorry to lose you in Raleigh, but obviously, it's great to have you in Washington, D.C. I don't know why in the world you wanted to go to Washington, D.C., but I'm glad it was you, and I'm glad you're there. So thank you.
Look, I just the Agriculture Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Veterans Affairs Committee are things that I fought for, and I'm glad that I'm on them. And I hope that everybody in North Carolina knows it's because I intend to fulfill the promises I made for the farmers and the men and women in armed services and the folks that are, most important in North Carolina and the nation.
Well, say what you want to about Thom Tillis. We know you to be a person who fulfills your promises. You certainly did it in the North Carolina legislature. So thank you for all you do for us, and especially thank you for being on with us this morning. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, man. We'll see you next week.
Okay, come on by. We'll set that up. Thank you. Talk to you soon. Senator Thom Tillis, live on Capitol Hill this morning. Great to hear his voice, and excited to have him represent the state of North Carolina.